I want to welcome you all to another counselor training. And this training is on grief and loss and that whole process that we all go through at one point in our lives or another in grieving and how to help our campers during that process as well. Um, One of the difficult things for kids, first of all, is just the fact that adults have a hard time saying they died, just accepting the facts, and so they come up with all kinds of word phrases that are kind of ambiguous, like grandpa went to sleep, so then he never sees grandpa again, so mom goes to sleep and the kid freaks out, right? Or that he went away, or they're no longer with us, or rather than just being able to really say they died. And it creates a lot of ambiguities for the kids. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this here. What is grief? Grief is a most emotional and physical response to loss of something that we hold dear. It could be a loss of a friendship with a friend, where a friend moves out of town. It could be a lot of different things. Campers feel loss anywhere from death of a loved one to death of a pet, to divorce, to moving, to unfulfilled promises, to diseases and handicaps, where suddenly you realize, I'm never going to be able to do that because this has happened to me and I have this physical handicap, to incarceration, especially for our campers, and that sudden loss of a family member. And when you really think about incarceration, a child experiences loss in a very hurtful way, but a very, at the same time, ambiguous or less concrete way at the same time. Because, for a child, at 10 or 11, a year is like, happy forever. I mean, you remember when you were 11, you think, oh, it's a whole year till Christmas. It's just a long time. A year is like 1/10 of your lifetime. And 5 years, well, that's like half of your life. That's half of forever. And for the parent being incarcerated, the average incarceration time or average sentence is 5 years. So for these kids, dad was here and then he's gone. But he's not quite gone because I still talk to him on the phone. So it's not a complete loss, but it's a very real loss because dad's not there for their birthday parties. Dad's not there for when I'm sad at night. Dad's not there when I'm scared. Dad's not there. And so these campers feel a lot of loss in that way as well. Loss can be expressed in a lot of different ways, anywhere from moodiness and depression to isolation to outbursts of anger to crying easily to testing statements like "you don't know my pain" or and these are statements that kids will use to test and see, hey, is this a safe person that I can share my hurt with? And you as a counselor really want to be sensitive to some of these things so that you can begin to help a camper work through this. But you have to listen, you have to observe things like self-harm, self-medication, a child that overeats, could be any really addictive substance. So there's a lot of misconceptions about grief. And there's a lot of things people say that they think is helpful, but in reality, it really is not helpful at all. So I'm just going to kind of go through some of these. One is we shouldn't feel sad, and it comes out as don't cry, don't be sad. So they see the child who's sad, their pet animal just died, and they come up and they say, don't cry, don't be sad. And of course, the child, what am I supposed to do with that? And of course, I like to ask the question, well, why not? I mean, their pet died. Why shouldn't they be sad? And I think in all this, and a lot of how people respond to grief, it's out of fear. We don't know what to do with this sadness. It's not something we do very well as a culture. And so we look at it, we want to not be there. Another thing people try to do is, or another thought is that we can replace the loss. So boy's dog dies, we'll get you another dog, or I'll be your dad, or we'll find another one, or it's this idea that we can replace what was lost. And the truth is we can't. Um, the dog, all the memories with that dog died with that dog. And the next dog it'll have new memories and new things, but you can't replace what was lost. And that's why we grieve, really, is because it's something that's irreplaceable. We don't grieve when we eat our food because we're going to eat another meal and it's going to be just as good, but we grieve when we lose our sense of taste, and now I'm never going to enjoy the taste of spaghetti again, or whatever. But the truth is, the reason we grieve is because it really is lost. It's not replaceable. Another idea is it's you need to let people grieve alone, or you need to grieve alone. And so when we see someone crying and everything, we tell the kids around, she's sad, you need to let her be alone. Or you need to let her be because she's sad. Or when we see someone sad, we say, do you want to be alone? And the idea is that somehow being alone is going to help us with our grief. And that's just really not true. When someone is sad, they need to be in a relationship. They need people to be with them. Being alone is the furthest thing from what they really need to get help. Another misconception is that time heals. And so if just more time can pass, the child will feel better. And somebody created an analogy to that if you have a flat tire, time makes it better. Well, not just time. You've got to fix the tire. If you fix the tire, then yes, in time your tire will be good again. But time does not heal. And the way that comes out in conversation is people, you see a child that's sad, he says, my dad died, and so you ask the question, well, how long ago did that happen? Because if it happened like 4 years ago, oh, okay, his dad died 4 years ago, not a big deal. Whereas his dad died yesterday, oh, he just needs more time. Or somebody will say, we'll just give it time. You'll feel better in time. But time really doesn't heal. What heals is being in relationship. We're going to be talking more about what really does heal. Another misconception is you need to be strong. For our older boys, they're going to feel this particularly because you're the man of the house now. You need to be strong for your mom. You need to be strong for your family. And for adults, we have the feeling that we need to be strong. We can't let children see us crying. And the misconception here is that it's not strong to cry. But Jesus cried. Jesus cried in front of people. Jesus wept. And it's not being sad because of loss is not an indication of a lack of strength. In fact, when you're able to grieve in front of others, you're actually helping them because you're modeling for them how to grieve. And that's really important. The next concept is you need to stay busy, or we need to somehow distract the pain. So, a child is sad, you say, oh, let's go do something, or you need to get up and get going. You can't just stay sad here. Or, what's funny, and you're going to tell them a joke, get them to laugh, but you want to distract them from the pain. And that doesn't heal anything because the pain's still there. It's just not getting taken care of. Of course, the last concept is medicating it, where you try to get them doing something that makes them feel better. And that might be food, that might be exercising. Those are kind of some okay things, but then there's other not so okay. Those are some culturally acceptable ways of medicating our pain, our feelings. But then there's also drugs, sex, and any number of things that can medicate the pain. But it's not helping heal the pain, it's just diminishing it for a time. And it comes out in phrases like, do you want some chocolate? Or even, let me give you a hug. And the reason I say let me give you a hug, if a child is sad, our thought is, if I can give them a hug and I can hug them enough, I'm going to make them stop feeling sad and they can move on. But it hasn't really done anything with the pain. It's okay to give touch. Touch is great. Being there with a person is great. But sometimes we can smother because we're trying to use that to fix the pain. rather than use that as I'm just being with you. Statements or tactics that don't help. Some people will say, we know how you feel, or I know how you feel because I lost my, and the truth is we really don't know how they feel. Each relationship, each loss, what was lost has different meaning. For some, their dad died, but they never had a relationship with their dad. And so their loss is more of and I'm never going to have a relationship with my dad. So that is the loss of a hope that somehow I'd have a relationship with that dad. And for other people, it's a loss of, my dad was always with me. And now that important part of my life is gone. And there's all kinds of different aspects of the pain. We don't know how someone feels. And so we really don't want to say, I know how you feel. And I'm going to get into some things that you can say that help later on. Changing the subject. I'm sorry. Do you want to go throw a ball? Or, let me tell you a joke. Or trying to get them to laugh. Again, that's it. I'm trying to distract them. And shame, which I really hope you as a counselor don't ever try. But people do use shame. Cry baby, don't cry, stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. That I want to embarrass you or threaten you to get you to stop crying. And again, all these things has a lot to do with the fact that we're afraid we can't embrace sadness, we can't embrace grief, and so we want to get away from it somehow. Also, intellectualizing. This is a really big one. With the intellectual statements, our thought is, if they know the truth, they won't be sad. And it's just not true. So we say things like, you should be grateful. You got to come to camp because your dad's in prison, or at least it wasn't your mom and dad who you lost, or he's safer now, or he's in a better place, or God will use this for good, or things will get better. And with all these things, somebody can absolutely believe every one of those statements and still be sad. And the reason that is because they really still have that loss. That person is still not there. And they're not sad because they don't believe any of that's true. They're sad because this person is no longer, or this is no longer part of my life. I've lost it. And none of these statements address that. And another, it's not really a tactic, but another thing we do is a child expresses sadness and we don't do anything. We don't say anything. My dog died. And then there's silence. Nobody picks up and says, oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that. Just silence. When a camper expresses even just a short statement of, my dad's in prison. If it's a group, you might want to visit later and say, hey, you said your dad was in prison. You want to talk about that. But talking about it instead of being silent, instead of just not making it a mute point or a mute feeling, but actually picking up on those and talking about it. And the last one is spiritualizing it. You need to trust God, or God needed your mom or dad, so that's why he took him to heaven, or you need to hold on to your faith in God. And all these are, of course, assumptions that the grief is somehow in conflict with trusting God, or in conflict with being able, our faith. And really it's not. Grief and grieving over loss has nothing to do with whether or not we trust God, whether or not, any of that. In fact, when Jesus goes to Lazarus' tomb, he knows he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But he still cries. He still embraces grief. And he, of course, knows all things, right? He knows that Lazarus is going to be raised from the dead. He knows that God's in complete control. He knows that God had a plan in all this, and yet he still grieves. And grief is not in conflict with faith and trust in God. Grief has to do with a loss. you can't help someone else do something you have never done. So it's like going to this next section about how to help someone, how to help a camper go through grief, how to help a person go through grief. I really want to encourage you to think about your own losses. I also want to encourage you to face your fear of sadness. As Americans, particularly, we are afraid of grief. I think it has to do with somehow a belief that grief is a very cold, lonely, dark place. And done well, grief is anything but cold, dark, and lonely. Grief has to do with love. So one of the ways that we can deal with loss as well is rejecting the item we lost. I like to talk to our campers about this, where a child is looking forward to going fishing with his dad. And so his dad says, this Saturday, I'll pick you up at your house and we're going to go fishing. So Saturday morning, the boy gets up early and he makes his peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and packs his lunch and gets everything together. And he goes out and he sits on the front porch and he waits for dad to show up. And dad never shows up. And mom says, no, I don't think dad's going to show. I tried to call him several times. He hasn't answered his phone. I think he's just not going to show up. And finally, about 1 o'clock, the boy throws down his fishing rod and he says, I hate fishing. Fishing's stupid. And that's it. He takes everything, throws it in the trash can, and he goes inside. And the way he's dealing with grief at that moment is he's hating the thing that he grieves, because he believes, if I hate that, then it won't hurt. The problem is, when he hates it, he ruins his ability to enjoy it for the rest of his life. So friends say to him later on, hey, you want to go fishing? Maybe he's in high school, and his buddies say, hey, we're going to go fishing. You want to come with us? His response, of course, is, no, I hate fishing, right? Later on in life, maybe he's got a good job. He's working with some friends. A guy says, hey, I'm going fishing this weekend. You want to come along? And he says, no, I hate fishing. And so for the rest of his life, he's never able to enjoy fishing. And so what I tell our campers is it is important that we learn to hate things. But we got to hate the right thing. Because if we hate the wrong thing, it's going to ruin it for life. So what's the right thing to hate in the situation? Well, the right thing to hate in the situation would be to say, I hate it when people make promises and they don't keep them. That really hurts. And that's okay. That's a very real pain. That's okay to hate that. That's a good hate, right? So later on in life, somebody says, hey, you want to go fishing? He says, you know what? I would love to go fishing. I hate it when people make promises and they don't fulfill it. So if we're going to go fishing, I want to make sure it really happens. And his friend threw a lug in his mind. Okay, this is important to Joe. I'm going to make sure it happens. And he can go fishing and have a great time and really enjoy fishing. Also, if he grieves the fact that, man, I just never got to do that. And then the neighbor man, older guy, says, hey, I'm going fishing. You want to come along? He says, yes. Oh, I've always wanted to go fishing, because he's grieved that loss. And for campers, being able to grieve the loss of a dad enables them to value men in their life. And so when there's a father figure in their life, it's, oh, I've always wanted one of these, because he's grieved it. And when we grieve something, we give value to it. If it's not important, we don't grieve it, right? We step on a fly, there's no grief ceremony, right? Because we don't value flies, we want them to die, right? But when our pet dog dies, we grieve because we value the dog. The dog was special. So here are some helpful things to say. One thing is to say, hey, I'm sorry. That's really tough, or that's really hard, or boy, that must be really sad. I would like to listen if you want to talk. So you're not forcing them, but you're giving them a, hey, I'll listen if you want to talk. Telling them it's okay to be sad instead of be tough, right? It's okay to be sad. I get that. Telling them, God cares about this. It's okay. It's okay to be sad. Asking them, what did you like about your mom, or what did you like about your dog, or asking those questions so they can talk about what it was that they lost. One of the things that a grieving person fears is that what they lost will be forgotten. And so asking them about those memories, that really means a lot to them. What did you dislike about? And sometimes we think, well, we can only focus on the good. But the truth is, being able to talk about what we didn't like is okay as well. I didn't like it when so and so. Grandma always made us eat chopped liver, and I don't like chopped liver. So I didn't like that about Grandma, that she always cooked chopped liver. That's all right. And then, is there anything you wanted to say to your grandma that you missed? Maybe it was, I just wanted her to know I loved her even though she gave me chopped liver. Or I just wanted her to know. And being able to say those things really helps. What is your first memory? What was your first memory with your dog? Oh, I remember when we picked him up at the farm where we got the dog, and he was the dog who came up and licked my cheek, and that's my first memory of him. What did it feel like when you found out that your dog was sick and he was going to die? It's just embracing the whole experience, the whole life, all the memories that go with it. What are you missing? What are you going to miss about not being able to do with your mom or your grandpa? Or, what are the things that you miss being able to do? Again, it's just embracing the loss. Instead of pushing aside and just being out there, go ahead and embracing it and letting them share and talk about it. And then tell me more about this. Tell me more about how they were special. If they say, "Oh, she was just nice," well, tell me more about her being nice. What kinds of things did she do that was nice? And that's being okay with them being sad, and they're gonna cry, and it's okay. You don't have to stop the crying. They're sad. It's okay to cry. It's good to cry. They won't die crying. But embracing that is really, really helpful. The two places that people get stuck in grief, where the pain just kind of stays there and it going through talking doesn't seem to help. The first is when there's unforgiveness toward the other person. In other words, Dad did something mean to me and I never forgave him, and now he's gone. And so the pain is he's never going to come and say, "I'm sorry." I'm never going to get that apology. And being able to talk about that with somebody, and then be able to say, and use a counselor can say, that sounds like that really hurt. Do you think you could forgive your dad? And yeah, you want to say that? Dad, I forgive you for. And being able to forgive helps them to be at a place to move on. But it's that unresolved pain. And of course, the other side of it's true as well. If we've been cruel or mean to somebody and now they're gone, then we have the, what, I'm never going to be able to say, "I'm sorry for." And, being able to say, "Boy, that sounds like you're kind of disappointed with yourself with how you handled that." Yeah. Could you say, "Hey, I'm sorry for how I did this"? And being able to do that with another person really brings healing. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit later. Some things you don't want to do. You don't want to share their story with somebody else without asking. So Mikey comes along and you say, "Hey, Mikey, did you hear that Joey's dad died?" And you start, sharing their story with somebody else. You want to make sure you get permission before you share. You also don't want to become a counselor. And in some ways it feels like maybe you're not sure if you're doing that, but grief is a normal thing. Talking about loss and sorrow is a normal thing. That's not counselor work. But when you're trying to go back in the past and sometimes do some type of therapy, or say to this pillow or whatever, or help them do counseling techniques. That's not your role. We're not counselors. What we are is we are we're caring adults who are willing to share all of life with the kids. You're not giving advice, you're just asking them to share. Don't make promises. It's a big one. When we see someone sad, we can say, they're sad because their dad is no longer part of their life, and you say, "Hey, I'll be your dad. I'll after camp, I will call you every week, and we'll talk, and we'll get together some." Don't make those promises. It's great if you do that, but just do it, okay? They've had a lot of people have made promises, and what's more likely to happen than not is it's easy for you to make the promise at camp because now you feel better. You've gotten him to stop crying, and then you forget. You get busy, college starts, whatever, and you don't show up. You don't fulfill your promise, and it's another hurt to the camper. So don't make promises. Making promises is you taking care of, is you worrying about yourself, and it's a selfish thing to do. Don't make promises. Do it. Okay, so that means make the phone calls afterwards. Don't promise him, just make the phone call. It's not going to change his world at all that you haven't promised to make him a phone call. He's not expecting you to make the phone call, but when you do, he's going to be blessed. Don't make it about you. Sometimes, camper share is a sad thing, and before you know it, you're all sad, and you're trying to get the child to comfort you. This is not about you. This is about their pain. And if they're okay with, if they're not sad and upset about it, they're fine. You go ahead. That's okay. You don't have to stir up some sadness because, man, I'm so sad. Now, aren't you sad? And you should feel my sadness. It's about them. Let them be sad. That's okay. And don't cuddle and smother. Again, that's that. They're crying, and I want to pull in my lap. And you want to use their sadness, which is a very unhealthy thing. It's okay for them to be sad, and you just sit beside them, and for them to cry, and you're okay, and they're not going to die crying. And at the very end, it's okay to give them a hug, and side hug or A-frame hug, and then you move on. But don't pull them on your lap and cuddle them and all of that. It's not helpful because it kind of shuts down some of the pain, and it makes it about you again. It's really about them. And really what they need is just somebody to listen. Last thing I want to talk about, and this is really for you. I don't expect to be doing this at all during the summer. In fact, if you feel like, oh, this would really be helpful for my camper, come talk to me first before we do any of this. I don't expect to do this at all at camp. But this is really good for you to do to help you process some of your own grief. And like I said, we've all experienced grief. And it's what we call a loss process letter. And what it is it's a letter that you write to the person that you lost. Not that you're going to be talking to the dead, but it just helps you to express your feelings about your loss. And it starts first with your first memory. I remember when, and your first feelings around that. And that follows all the first feelings and all the firsts and all the feelings around them. It covers your happy times and your sad times. It covers the things you liked about them, what you disliked, the things that maybe you did unkind toward them, or maybe the things they did unkind toward you. And with those two things, you want to get to, you were mean and snappy toward me, but I forgive you, and that lets you let go. Or there's times when I was really disrespectful to you, and I'm sorry I was that way. I wish I wasn't. And that's again, that helps that resolve and bring those parts to end. And then follow through with the lost memories as well. The first time Grandpa realized he had a pain, the first diagnosis, it looks like this is cancer, the first hospital trip, when you realized the doctor said, you know what, this is it. He's going to be passing by in the next couple hours or next day or so. And then, the loss and all that surrounds that. You want to also include loss of dreams because, like I said earlier, the boy who didn't have the relationship with the father, and now the father's gone. And go ahead and write about those feelings as well, and then being able to say goodbye, and ending it with, I really love you, and goodbye. And I want to share a letter that I wrote this past this January. Grace and our family had a miscarriage, and I want to read something that I wrote that kind of does this. All right, so my letter reads, "Dear baby Michelle, I first started thinking about you right before Christmas. Your mother had told me that she was suspecting she was pregnant. And during a weekend getaway at Grant's Bed and Breakfast in St. Louis, we bought a pregnancy test. I was the one who went in for the test. Inside the store, I had to decide whether to buy one or two tests. Two tests only cost 50% more than one test. I remember how almost every time in the past when I bought one test, we had to buy another before it showed that we were pregnant. Of course, I figured if I bought two tests, Murphy's Law would prevail and I would only need one. In the end, I bought two tests so I wouldn't have to make a second trip to the store. The next morning, while I was still waking up, your mother took the test. I remember she told me that it was showing a plus sign right away. It was then I realized that we were pregnant. I knew this was going to be a difficult change for your mother and I. As I thought about it, I knew it would be a hard one for me as well. Here again, I'm embracing the plus and the minus, the feeling of excitement, but also, hey, I wasn't really. There was also some uncertainty. Then I thought I should have gotten one pregnancy test. I thought to myself, your mom and I are 40, and I had already accepted that we weren't going to have any more children. Now I was realizing that this meant more diapers, more sleepless nights, more child raising. I also fell in love with the thought of holding you in my arms. Inside, I hoped you would be a baby girl, though I would love a son as well. That day we went Christmas shopping. As we drove around, we thought about how we would make the announcement. It was clear with Mom feeling really sick that your brothers and sisters would figure things out soon. We wanted to have the joy of announcing you. We settled on buying baby items for your siblings to open. As we shopped for each one, I was filled with excitement about having another baby to hold. We got home that night, so the next day, Sunday afternoon, we sat the kids down and told them that we had an announcement. Last year at this time, we'd announced to the family a Disney trip, a trip to Disney World. We got Esther's camera videoing and sat down. Timmy immediately went to, we're having a baby. Bethany was on video call from Wisconsin at Madison Base. As they opened all their gifts, at the same time, Bethany cried and everyone else got excited. We were having a baby. It was so exciting. To announce to the rest of the world on Facebook, we did a picture of me holding a book about how babies are made, and Timmy holding a jar of pickles. Mom did actually want some at one point. Katie rubbing Mom's feet and Jabari eating more Mom's peanuts, while Mom held her tummy with a nauseous look on her face. It was fun hearing congratulations back from family and friends. Though your conception was a surprise, I wasn't going to be a father who had to apologize to the world for getting his wife pregnant at 40. I was proud of you and of being a father again. I remember calling my mom and telling her about with Jabari. Both your grandmothers were delighted to hear you were on the way. It meant so much to have so much family and friends welcoming you into the world. I started getting up every morning and getting your mother yogurt from the fridge to keep her from getting nauseous. Then there was the challenge of figuring out what your mother wanted to eat, and your mom would be concerned because she wasn't feeling as sick as she had. Then came the day when we went to see your midwife. It was exciting to be here again. She was so sweet and so kind and understanding, so competent. When the time came to hear your heartbeat, it was silent. I comforted myself with the thought that some people are better than others at finding the heartbeat. A little later, we did an ultrasound at the Pregnancy Resource Center. I was so excited about hearing your heartbeat for the first time. When the time came for the ultrasound, your heart was silent. I kept praying and hoping that I would hear your heart. But there was nothing. No flashing heart, no movement, no sound. I held your mom's hand and prayed about what, but it was evident you were no longer with us. As we left, I was too choked up to do anything more than a whisper. I am sad, the thought. I will never hold you in my arms as a baby or smell your sweet hair, listen to you sleep or make the sounds of a baby. I know that you are with God now, and I trust more than it, who I trust more than anyone. But I want you to know you are missed, my sweet baby Michelle Rose. I will always love you, Daddy. And so that's a lost letter. It includes all the emotions around the memories and everything. We did this together as a family, and the kids had some really special things to share as well. And having done it together, it really brought us together and also brought feelings of closure, but also valuing baby Michelle's life. And that's a lot of the grief process. And, having written the letter doesn't mean that later on there's not other things that come up that remind me of the sorrow of the loss. But it's an opportunity to embrace loss and to give a value to life and also to let go. So as you go on from here, I really want to encourage you to write your own grief letter about something that you've lost, someone you've lost. And I think you'll learn a lot from it. And it'll also enable you, as you're a counselor this summer and your campers share some of their sad stories of loss. All right, that's it. In conclusion, with grief, this isn't a comprehensive study on grief, but I wanted to get you thinking as a counselor about grief and how it affects the campers and how you're going to relate to your campers in relationship to grief, and also just encourage you to start thinking about your own life and processing grief.